What's up guys, it's Scoopman5000. Today we're back for another action figure review, and today we're looking at the Mcfarlane Toys Mandarin Spawn. And if you've been following, you know I took a look at the blue variant that actually came out first. That was under the Walmart exclusive gold label. And what we're getting here is actually much closer to the original design of Mandarin Spawn. This is the standard release because of that. And it comes in a package that's albeit pretty much the exact same from the blue release, but it just doesn't have that gold label branding. And what we're getting here is a lot of the same from that blue figure, but there are some differences in the sculpt, in the weapons, and of course the paint job. But since I did already look at that blue figure, I'm going to be treating this a lot more as a direct comparison with the original, since when I reviewed the blue version, I didn't actually go into detail about the differences between the sculpts. But the packaging here, it is very nice, and it is the exact same from the blue figure, other than a few small differences. But you see you have the nice Spawn logo and Mandarin Spawn on the bottom. Both sides just extend the window of the box in the exact same shape. And then on the back, you're just getting a large shot of the product. But as of right now, these Mandarin Spawn figures are kind of weird one-offs. There isn't really a dedicated Spawn line right now, but it definitely seems like we're heading in that direction. Of course, we just got the Kickstarter figure, which was our previous video, but also recently some glimpses at a Gunslinger and a Redeemer figure. So hopefully a full 7-inch articulated line of Spawn figures is coming in this style packaging. But for right now, we have our Mandarin Spawns for that fix. And with all the packaging taken care of, let's get to it and let's open them up. And here's the Mandarin Spawn out of the packaging, and he's a little bit light on accessories, but he definitely makes up for that in sculpt. He's coming, of course, with the standard issue Mcfarlane Toys stand, and it does have the Spawn logo this time. It's the exact same one from the original Mandarin, the blue version. And then as for his weapons, he is sharing one with the blue version. That's this larger sword with the plume coming out of the end of it. And you can see in the sculpt there's a dragon etched into the blade. And this is the exact same piece, just a little bit different in paint. And you can see the comparison here. And then the other weapon, which is unique to this version, is a bit of a slimmer sword, a bit of a different style. I'm not a swords expert, so I don't know the names of these type of blades. But this is the unique weapon for this set. But outside of that, this is all you're going to get. It's just this beautifully sculpted Mandarin Spawn figure. And like I said, I already did review this guy in somewhat detail with the blue version. So for this, I'm going to be doing a bit of a different take, and it's going to be a direct comparison with the original. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to move him to the side, and let's get our original Mandarin Spawn. This is from the early 2000s Mcfarlane Toys, and arguably when they were at their peak, you could say. And right off the bat, I mean, the main complaint people have about these old Mcfarlane Toys is that they are not posable really much at all. He does have some articulation. There's like a swivel here in this arm. There's a hinge in this one. There's pieces that do move, but more or less, he's designed to be in this type of pose. For this Mandarin Spawn, he came with this double-bladed sword. Kind of looks like the one Thanos uses in Avengers Endgame. And then he also did come with a large shield, and I seem to have misplaced that. It's sitting here in a bin somewhere. But since the shield isn't a part of this release, I'm not even going to go over it. And then he also does have these two katanas in a sheath in the side here. These are removable, but I do usually just keep them in the sheath when I'm displaying this Mandarin Spawn. So right off the bat, you can definitely tell this is the same design. The same sculpt is basically here. A few things are changed. Kind of like the big spike here on the side is done with different coloring and different designs. This one is definitely a lot simpler when you look at them. And I guess that is the drawback. And these probably came around the same price point if you compare it to each era. But like I said, this is obviously arguably a point where Mcfarlane was at their best in terms of their sculpt and their paint. And I'm also sure that adding more articulation gives you less opportunity for paint when it comes down to cost and putting this in a $20 figure aisle. But like this stuff right here, this was revolutionary for the time. I guess this is more in line with modern action figures, but this is the type of thing that influenced modern action figures. So it's kind of interesting looking at them both together. I'd say that the main thing that the original definitely has is just that there's a lot more paint, and also that the gold color is a lot better, because I think that's an issue with a lot of modern toys. Whenever you get a gold or a silver color, it almost always looks bad. And I think that's definitely still the case with this new Mandarin Spawn. And I think you have certain pieces like the chest armor with the skull here that actually look pretty good, but like the shoulder pieces, the knee pads, the belt here, and especially in the face, it does look cheap. It does come off like a toy. Whereas I think if you look at the original here, he does not look like a toy. This thing is a statue, it's a piece of art, and it's something that, you know, maybe you'd be a bit more proud to display over the new one. But obviously this one's going to come with articulation and more opportunity for posing, and he's also going to fit in with your other Spawn figures of DC Multiverse. So I'm glad to own both of them. I think there's positives and negatives to each of them. I guess this is for you to make your own opinion. Maybe if you have the original, is it worth getting the new one? I guess that's if you favor articulation. And even once we get into articulation, this guy isn't exactly the best. But at the very least, it's interesting to see such a classic design and one that is so almost over-designed and gaudy and detailed, and take that and put it into a modern scope of a $20 super articulated action figure. Turning the figure around, that's actually a different story though, because, and this was also an issue with the blue version, but this one's arguably worse. It's like they basically forgot to paint the back of the figure. And if you look at this one, you could tell that most of the sculpt, the design beats are still there. The armor down here, all the feet and the legs are completely unpainted on both sides. This little pouch is still here, but this version is painted. But all this armor is completely not painted. And it's strange to me that they would go through all that, but then they'd still paint, you know, the spikes back here, the bone growths. They paint this skull in the back, but not even the back of the head. But again, I guess that all comes down to budget and modern toy making versus maybe what they were able to do back in the day. With limited articulation, they could put more budget into paint and sculpt and all that. So we'll take him out of the frame and we'll shed the focus back on this original one, but I definitely wanted to spend a decent amount of time with that direct comparison, because I kind of didn't do that with the blue version because we knew this one was coming. And I know the original Mandarin Spawn had a couple different colorways and a couple different sizes you could get him in, but this is the most direct, similar comparison you could do with your modern versus new one. But yeah, I guess really my main complaint is just, since I know the design from the original figure, certain paint that's missing is glaring. I think the feet is probably the biggest downgrade. These are just cast in all black, and with that amount of sculpt in all black, it just definitely looks a bit unfinished. I don't hate that the back is unpainted, because 9 times out of 10 I'm not looking at the back of my figures, but it does come off as something that is very obviously cost cut. For me, it's whatever. It's not the end of the world. He still looks good, and I think especially maybe if you don't have that one, or if you're just not used to the old Mcfarlane style with the set pose and the limited articulation, then maybe this is the way to go. And obviously he's going to be easier to get because he's a brand new mass market figure. Now we're going to go over his articulation, which should be the selling point if you're really looking at these two side by side. Obviously this being the modern Mcfarlane Toys, this is really the major improvement, is the articulation. But when I had the blue version, there's definitely just issues because the way he's designed, because he still is complex and he still has a lot of complex pieces, even though the paint might be lacking. So the head, I believe, is just on a ball joint. There isn't too much range though, and again, that's all a matter of sculpt. There's a big armor around the neck, and the head sculpt here is gigantic because it is this large Oni kind of style mask. Moving down into his torso, he does have the double ball joint, one at the waist and one at the kind of abs here. So with that, he's going to move back pretty far. I mean, that's a pretty good range. The usability of that, in terms of how you pose the rest of them, I guess will vary, but that is pretty good articulation, and even forward is not too bad. It's probably better than a lot of figures we're getting from Mcfarlane, and of course the tilt is probably the biggest feature of having the double ball joint. There's a butterfly shoulder in there, and I feel like these kind of slightly rotational butterflies are pretty common now with action figures, where they're not particularly extreme, but I guess they do just give you that little bit extra, and I guess it's better that they're there than that they're not. The shoulders aren't really going to go past this angle, and maybe even this one as well. I know last time I actually broke this horn off and I had to glue it back on. This one seems better, but even still, the arms are really going up that far because of these big shoulder pieces. I'm sure the joint itself is capable of going farther. The elbows are kind of on like ball joints with hinges in them, and they kind of rotate all around a lot. You kind of have to orient it before you pose it. But with that, you're getting the full swivel and about a 90-degree single joint. Then you're getting the usual Mcfarlane wrist joints there. The legs are going to split at about a 45-degree angle. He's going to kick back, I guess, decent. Forward is all right. We're going to take off his stand, of course, and he does kind of have issues standing, but I'm sure it's not impossible. He does have a pretty good double jointed knee. Again, same as last time, this horn actually blocks the joint, and it seems like it'd actually be able to go farther. And I think when I reviewed the blue gold label, I actually completely missed that he has foot articulation, and it's actually pretty decent at that. So the foot actually can go all the way far back like that. So if you're getting some real dynamic poses, that's going to be useful. You can see even like that, he's holding that stance because the feet are able to articulate pretty well. So that's like pretty incredible going far back. Going forward, maybe not so much because the armor blocks it, but that is slightly forward. And I guess it kind of can pivot around the ankle, but it's still somewhat limiting, but also more than you'd expect with a design like this. And that does just about cover the Mandarin Spawn. So now let's go ahead and let's do some comparison. And for this, we'll bring back the original as well as the blue gold label version, and I'll just go over a few more differences with those. So you can see here the cloth that hangs from his belt is different. Actually, the belt piece is different as well. So there's like skulls designs here, there's dragons here. The belt is actually a lot smaller in profile there. This one's a bit wider, and it's definitely more accurate to the original. The middle armor looks about the same, it's just painted differently. I think one of the biggest things is actually that this horn, also there's two of them, but it's on the opposite side, which isn't as accurate to this original design. This time it's on the correct shoulder, the right shoulder. For the other shoulder armor, there's kind of a unique skull here with some spikes. And then I guess the head sculpt would be one of the major differences as well. None of them are truly accurate to this one, but this one's just way detailed and almost over-designed. But this one, you could see the horns, they're facing forward on this one, and they kind of face up on the original, which I think I almost prefer that look. And this one really has a pretty distinct V shape for a lot of the lines, and this one is a bit more natural shape. For your modern Spawn figures, here's the Mortal Kombat 11, the original sword version, and then also the Blood Feud Hunter. And like I said in the Kickstarter video, we're just building a cool little Spawn universe, even just with the recent Todd McFarlane Spawn figures, and I think it's only going to get better once we get more Kickstarters and hopefully more general release figures as well. Speaking of which, here he is with the Kickstarter figure, and this is a great looking pair as well. These two have done battle in the comics, so this is a pretty cool image itself, and they're almost similar in the fact that they are articulated and in a lot of places pretty well, but I guess the overall design limits them from being truly free in their posing. And then finally, for your McFarlane DC Multiverse, here's the Action Comics 1000 Superman and the Todd McFarlane designed Batman. And overall, that does do it for your look at the Mandarin Spawn 2021 release. And I think that this is a good figure overall, and if anything, it's an interesting experiment, and it's a way back into the fold for a premium Todd McFarlane Spawn action figure line. And it's definitely within McFarlane's character to kind of jumpstart a Spawn articulated line with such a challenging and unique and kind of bombastic design like this one is. I guess really the color preference is what you got to choose if you're going to pick between this or the gold label. In terms of the actual sculpting, I might actually prefer some of the gold label's changes to the design, and maybe the lack of paint is more noticeable because the colors kind of go together better. So I usually say something like this, I'm glad to have both basically, but if I had to choose a favorite, it might be that blue version. As always, I'm going to be taking some pictures of this guy, and you can check out my whole library of figure photography on Instagram, Scoopman_5000, but that does cover this video, and I'll see you guys in the next action figure review.